Well, what a lovely afternoon and what a lovely group of people. Nice to see you all back. Hopefully you had a good morning and your minds were turning over in a positive way, like soil in the spring. Fertile, ready to be seeded and growing great trees of knowledge. And we will continue that growth pattern this afternoon when we talk about course design. When we look at what we do in terms of our jobs as instructors, we have talked a lot about learning outcomes and how that is a foundational part of being prepared and understanding what we have to do. When we are confident that we have good learning outcomes, maybe it comes out of a curriculum mapping exercise. Maybe it comes from a governing body that gives us direction. We move forward saying, okay, we know what we need to teach. And then we talked a lot about assessment. So what are we going to do in terms of finding out if we're meeting those learning outcomes, get our assessment in place. And now we're starting to talk about the way that we engage our students or the way that we bring them in so that they are able to do activities. We're going to talk about particular teaching strategies on Monday. Seems like a long ways away, but today we're gonna hint at some of that when we talk about course design. And course design is something that I have, again, done lots of in my lifetime. I've done lots of face-to-face course design for undergrad, graduate, postgraduate, certificate, curricular, co-curricular, like all kinds of opportunities in community, on campus, a really interesting challenge that I have enjoyed many, many times. So that's where I'm coming to you from that angle. I also, because I work with the next generation of teachers, I'm trying to get them to think about how they operate in their classroom. So much of that work is contributing to the idea of course design. So we're going to take a look at some step-by-step things that you can do. We're going to look at planning in general. We're also going to look at how to put a syllabus together or some ideas in terms of what you can include in your syllabus. I know that, or I'm learning, or I think, based on what I've heard, you have some flexibility in your syllabus?
No.
Okay. So when we talk about that part of the syllabus planning, we'll talk about that other document that you will make that will go alongside the formal syllabus that you'll have to do and the one that helps the students out where you have a bit of flexibility. So thank you for that clarification, because again, I'm trying to give you practical opportunities or practical advice, but I also know that in some ways you are constrained by the system that you're working in.
Which flexibility you are talking about?
What's that?
Which flexibility you're talking about? We don't have any flexibility.
No. Well, we're going to create some. Okay.
Only thing is we can do something extra,
Yes.
but we have to cover that.
Yes.
So there's no flexibility in that. They can't be electives in that.
No, I'm talking about flexibility in terms of the information that you share with students. Yeah. And I think this morning you talked about sometimes you are already doing that, where it's
something extra.
Supplemental. Yeah. So when it comes to planning, there are some familiar phrases. You know, when I use the term bumper sticker, what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Something you put on the back of your car. Sometimes it's a saying. Sometimes it's your favorite football team or your favorite cricket team or a happy face or something like that. So oftentimes, and
Sidhu Moosewala.
What's that?
Sidhu Moosewala. There's a singer.
It could be that as well. A lot of times bumper stickers are quotes or little familiar sayings and whatnot. So when I talk about bumper stickers, when it comes to course planning, I'm talking about to fail to plan is to plan to fail.
Exactly.
Something you would see on the back of a car or maybe on a t-shirt or something like that.
Yeah.
If you don't know where you're going, then you're definitely going to get there. So that idea of thinking, if I don't do planning, if I don't think about what's happening in the future, then I'm not going to be successful. And that's why we are talking about this today. That idea of rather than just go in and say, I know my content and I'm just going to go through a whole bunch of PowerPoint slides, how can I create a cohesive learning experience for my students? Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Just one quick question.
Sure.
So whatever you planned for yourself in your life, did everything go that way?
No,
So planning,
a plan is, I'm either okay or I'm not okay, but at least you've got something.
most of the things we plan.
If you don't plan, you're doing this in life. Right? You're going through life without any kind of opportunities, so I'm saying that planning is a guide. It is not what you will do. It is a way that you can possibly get through a situation. So that's very philosophical, and I appreciate that. But I'm gonna be so darn practical this afternoon, it's gonna scare the philosophy right out of you. So bumper stickers,
Most of the things people.
fail to plan to fail. Okay. Oftentimes in post-secondary, we're looking at planning from 3 levels. So I want you to work with me here, and I want you to think back to 2 hours ago when we wrapped up program or curriculum mapping. That was planning around a program. So you're familiar with that, the idea of what are we doing for this large piece of a program that we have to be able to deliver. And so we talked about some of those elements that need to be a part of it, and how we can map it out and how we can determine what's there. The next level is the course level, and that starts to become more of the responsibility within the department. So next year, you're going to teach the intro class, you're going to teach the advanced class, you're going to teach so that idea around planning those individual courses that you as faculty members understand where your expertise is and where you fit. And then when it comes to the actual lesson planning, a lot of that is in your hands. You are the ones who determine, well, I've done this in the past and it has worked really well. This is how I'm going to deliver it. Or I've seen a colleague at another university use this technique, so I would plan my lessons throughout the year. And that way I ensured I have some kind of structure. And you're right, it's just a plan. And sometimes we come into plans like this, like, I hope it's going to work. And sometimes we have a plan that we have been through and modified and changed, and it works very well. And it's never the same. You were talking about consistency in assessment. Our instruction, there's no consistency in that as well. We may have the same plan, but our students are always different. The weather is different. There's a pandemic. There's all kinds of things that come into play. But it is a way of giving us a chance to view the future and have an idea of what that might look like. And so these 3 levels, again, you're probably very familiar with them. As you move from the bottom to the top, there's less and less flexibility. There is less and less autonomy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does show you that whatever skills that you have in terms of planning can be applied at a variety of levels. Okay. This is one kind of planning cycle, or one way that people look at planning, and you can see some people start with the course planning. Some people start with revising what they've done in the past. Some folks like to begin with individual lessons and then build what goes on, as opposed to starting with the course and building in the other direction. Some folks start solely with student assessment and build around it. And you can see with the way the arrows are that it's not often done systematically or consistently. People don't say, oh, I absolutely will start here and go there. Many people don't do that. They are often given someone else's course. So when you start teaching, welcome, professor, here you go. And you get a pile of papers. And there are lots of other things that are going on as a faculty member, especially when you're a new faculty member, and you take whatever is given to you a lot of times and you work through it. So this process, when you see this, you might be like, oh, well, I don't know where to start. Well, I think next Monday I have to be in front of a class, so maybe I should get that lesson going. And then I'll work on the next one on the weekend, right? So that might be the approach that you do because you don't know any differently. Or you may say, oh, I met with people in my department and they're talking about this course in a different way. So I'm going to start with the main ideas and become familiar with the learning outcomes and then the assessment. Or maybe you have taught a class before and then you're revising it. So you want to work with something you already have. So you can see that can be very confusing. And if you're new to teaching and you've had lots of good informal mentorship, it may not have been mentorship around the planning process. So that's why I put this big bar across there. Much like you are unique individuals, the way that you plan will be unique. If you have a system, you can still maintain your uniqueness, but you can use it more efficiently and more effectively. And that's what I'll talk a bit about today. Okay. UBD, has anyone heard of Understanding by Design? This is a cocktail party thing. So at your next gathering, people are, oh, if I had a system to plan my classes better. And you can say, oh, well, have you heard of Understanding by Design?
It's like something like reverse engineering.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. So it's backwards looking.
Yeah.
So instead of this mess, what we're going to do is
you
we're
have
going
the
to start
outcomes
with,
in mind, and then you plan accordingly.
absolutely. And I've kind of alluded to that a bit, where we start with learning outcomes and then we look at assessment and then we add the actual activities. The reason why you do that is because then you're always starting with the end goal.
Yeah.
When you do a lesson that starts with, oh, I'm going to welcome people into class, and then I'm going to show them a movie, and then are you actually thinking about the learning outcomes the whole time? Maybe not. Maybe you're thinking about lecturing, or maybe you're thinking about your exam. If you start with the learning outcomes first and work backwards, that becomes that anchor point or that foundational part of the planning. And then you move backwards.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very right.
So there's a really good system. And I have, when I leave you with a whole bunch of materials, I've got a couple of white papers on that discuss how it's used in K-12 education that will give you a bit more theory behind it. But this is a very common approach to planning in the education world. And it is one that, as I mentioned, allows you to be anchored in what you're supposed to teach, especially if it's new material.
Yeah, so that you don't get distracted away from the target.
Absolutely. So what am I to teach? And then how am I going to assess it? And then what are my actual activities? Again, anchored in that particular point. Okay, so the benefits, you're organized. If you only have 7 or 8 learning outcomes in your course, then it's going to be much more streamlined, and you're not going to be adding superfluous. Remember, we had this, Dr. Harmon, you didn't get to see my acting yesterday, so we had this need to know. When we're working with this kind, we stay focused on need to know, not the nice to know, not the irrelevant. We're constantly focused on that small ball of information because we keep going back to the learning outcomes. With our curriculum mapping, those may be given to us. Is that your phone? Oh, okay. You give me that look. I thought, oh, I thought it was your phone. Okay. The other thing is the assessment is easier because we're already making that linkage between the learning outcomes and assessment.
Okay.
And I am convinced that all of you are really good in terms of your understanding of how you start with the learning outcome and the assessment. So we're already planning that. The other thing is that we're not just randomly teaching. And I know that sounds strange when we have a focus, but some people who have taught the same content for a long time, they drift a little, right? Or it's not as exciting. And we know what it's like to teach the boring part of our content. And it's boring for us because we've done it so many times, but it can't be for the students. So when we are reminded the significance of those learning outcomes and why it is important, it allows us to think about how we engage, to have that enthusiasm, to have a plan that makes sure that we're not like, let's just skip this because I've done it 20 times. Whereas the students in front of you have never seen it one time. So you have to make sure that you are sticking with it. Absolutely.
But just to overcome the boredom, you can always keep on updating.
Yeah.
Trust me, medical science is very dynamic. So you get updates all the time. So even if you have got, say, few lines to update, you have to do a lot of homework. So that that keeps up the excitement all the time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Other things that inform your planning. So the university culture, we talked about values a bit this morning. So your values are reflected in your planning. What is important? How are you fitting those activities into your instruction based on what your university values. Or maybe sometimes you have to go against the culture. Maybe you have to make a change in the culture. There are colleges where, I think of colleges of nursing, for example. So I work with colleges of nursing, and there's a very rigid structure, and it is reinforced in hospitals, and it's also reinforced in the colleges. And if you go to a hospital, you always know who the head nurse is, and you always know who the trainee nurse is, and the way they are treated. And in colleges of nursing, and I've seen it in so many different colleges of nursing. I've worked with a number of them, and the professors are the head nurse, and then the associates are not the head nurse, and the assistants are like the trainee nurses. And it's remarkable how that culture is mirrored in the way that the instruction is. Now, if you have a culture around veterinary medicine where you believe in community involvement and engagement, the opportunity to work with people that you will work with as your clients, as the people who are paying you, right, as your customers, then you want to have that as an important value. Why those interpersonal caring skills are a part of what you're hoping to instill in your students. So that's again, something to keep in mind when it comes to planning. The other idea is the expectation around your faculty. We talked about your teachers association is maybe not strong here. In my university, it is very strong. And so the expectation is that there is always time for research. So when course planning happens, we don't give people so much teaching that they're unable to balance the service and the research side. Whereas some institutions may not have that. So in my college or in my university, it's differentiated a little bit, but there's always plenty of time carved out so that people can be teacher scholars and have a vibrant program of research. So that means for me, I would teach 5 classes a year over the 3 terms. So I might, or 5 courses rather. So I might do 2 in the winter term, so September to December, and I might do 3 from January until April. I don't know if this sounds familiar. And then I would not teach it all in the summertime. So I would use that time to do research. Not that I wouldn't be researching the year round, but we also have organizations that hire people just to teach, and they do 10 classes a year. So they do not do any research because they are constantly teaching and grading and planning. What is it like here in terms of how many courses you are assigned? I'm curious.
Well, there are 2 semesters.
Okay.
And for undergrad, we have got just 1 course.
Okay.
Like we have got 150 or 160 lectures. So entire department, that course is split. Okay, you'll take 25, you'll take 30, 25, like that. And then for postgrad, teaching MVSC and Master's and PhD, we have got different courses. There can be 4, 5, 6, like that per semester.
Yeah.
So that undergrad or your grad course is just one throughout the year. Earlier, there used to be semester system in that, but now it is, prof system. After a year, then in that course, we conduct 3 exams, but undergrad course is 1 and postgrad can be up to 10 in an year.
Other assignments, does that sound right as far as how it fits in with what you're doing?
I think it is more, and we are not free, like you are saying.
Yes.
You are not free.
Nobody is free.
33% is teaching, 33% is research,
33
and 33% is extension.
extension.
Okay.
Like if you stay next week, we'll having that farmer's
Yes.
fair.
We drove past.
So that will be something like crazy. Every
Question, if you're having a class, for example, at 4 p.m.
Mhm.
you have to take a class.
good example.
And
Meeting.
how much time will you take before taking class to revive yourself, to get to the topic, that this topic I have to teach
How much time you need
and I
actually?
need what to prepare for it.
Yes.
So every time you go to a class of 50 or 60 students,
Mhm.
obviously you will read your topic, what you're going to teach. So
Yeah.
how much time you take to
You'll
I do for
1 hour
every
class.
hour of instruction, I do at least an hour of preparation.
at least an hour.
we don't even get 5 minutes.
So I will usually spend my Sundays Because I'm teaching during the week, I will spend all day Sunday going through my content,
That's a good
preparing
goal.
my material, even if I've just taught it. Even if I just taught it like the semester before, I always revise, I always review, I make sure my resources are up to date and current. If I have a website that I used, I want to make sure that in the last 3 months that someone didn't take it down, that I've still.
We are
But
too
I'm
much overburdened,
No, and overburdened with some really useless work.
useless work.
Yeah.
Yesterday, class was.
Not being recorded.
I
You might have an idea of generally the kinds of students that you get each year, but over time that has changed. And I think that's one of the toughest things to do as an instructor is to say, I'm not teaching the same type of student that I taught, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Mhm.
I always found that popular culture is a good way of judging how things have changed. And so you can see how some aspects of popular culture that your students would bring into class or that you would discuss. After a while, people, they don't know what you're talking about as the instructor. You tell a joke, you make a reference, and it's almost like your children are in the room. When you say something and your kids are like, and they roll their eyes, and then you realize, we have crossed over a generational barrier. We have moved on from and those are things that you have to keep in mind. Like what is unique about your students? How have they changed? A really helpful way of being reflective in that regard is doing a learner analysis. And that's the handout that you got this morning. So it should be in front of you. Now,
When you begin planning a course, we never plan.
yes. So I was just about to say where you got ahead of me. That's your problem. You keep getting ahead of me. Let me.
I think he has your soft copy.
Oh, yes. So in this case, this document is used for people who are starting a new course, but it can also have application, as my good friend has just said, in revision
Okay.
and refocusing. And it's often a good thing to go through this at the beginning of a semester or before you launch into a new set of classes, just to remind yourself of, have things changed? Is there an aspect of my learners that is different that I can work with in a unique way or something along those lines that may have changed? Thank you. And what might you do with them?
You need to go into detail of that stuff.
Okay, so you may need more detail, absolutely,
Start with some basics and
Introduce to the subject.
yeah. Basics, a good introduction. Build their confidence. A lot of times when we come into an area where we don't know anything, you talk to people like, oh, I don't know anything and I'll never be any good. And what you want to do is build those students up, give them some early successes and go, oh, or make them interested in what's going on. And I think when you provide that introduction, that other information, it can be really helpful. Some of these aren't applicable, but where it says what computer skills do they have, maybe that's a really important part of the work you do. So if you're doing simulations or if you're doing mapping, if you're doing calculations, like what is that skill set that they have to have? And if they don't, then that gives you the opportunity to.
What is this, ESL and EAL?
Yeah.
What's that?
English as a second language or English as an additional language. And I'm not sure, is that something that you deal with here? Because all of your instruction is in English.
Is in English, it's not applicable.
But if you have learners who are not strong in their English
Most of them
language
are,
skills,
most of them
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
because our high school in India is pretty strong.
Welcome. Yes.
High school education in India is pretty strong. So,
Previously, when it was in the Punjab Agriculture University, they were having BSc. There the eligibility for the course was 10.
Yeah.
So there they were having some courses like that.
Okay.
class 10, it was, eligibility was class 10, then you have to do English.
Yeah.
Here it is high school and high school English is quite good. So that EAL or ESL is,
Yeah, it's not an issue.
that's not an issue.
Here's a really interesting one in terms of how motivated are the students to learn?
Oh, I think the
So-
senior-most can,
So perfect timing, students. Hi, welcome. Glad to have you back.
that's,
Nice smile. Good. I like that.
that's
What,
the hardest question.
what would you say in terms of, that's fine. In jail, they
Can
only
you
give you
answer
one call too, right?
No, it's
Oh, okay.
from the landscaping.
Oh,
I have to say.
No, I understand. I'm just gonna get hard enough. We saw the landscapers actually at lunchtime. They're doing a great job preparing the site for.
Yeah, he is the landscaping officer.
So would you say that you are motivated for every class
LSO.
that you take? Are you excited for all of the courses that you take in your program?
maybe tell truth.
Very. Tell the truth. Yeah, you heard him. Not all of them, right?
Not all of them, right?
No? And that's what we do, right? We have students who are like, I don't choose this class, this program has chosen me, and I am going to take this class.
By compulsion.
So how you get, and Dr. Pinder, you said, get them excited, right? Give them some information, make them realize that this is not, just because last year's class said, oh, this is the worst class ever, right? Well, make up your own mind. And give them the opportunity to make up their own minds by doing something that is engaging. And so how do I do that? How do I build that into my class? Very helpful if you're doing this type of learner analysis, because you're not just thinking about content. And so many times instructors think that teaching is just delivering content.
No,
Teaching is engaging
the
students.
students, and most important.
Yeah. Absolutely. So their attitudes, okay, maybe they're too excited. All right, I'll give you another bumper sticker. When you have a hammer in your hand, everything is a nail. You know that one?
Hmm.
So if you only think of one way of solving problems, you're going to try to solve those problems one way every time. And cleaning a teacup with a hammer is not a good idea.
Hmm.
Makes for broken, right? It's the same idea. If your students are so in love with pathology, oh my gosh, it's the most important thing in the world. You have to allow them to expand their horizons and realize that there are other exciting classes to take as well. So it goes from one extreme where they are not interested to maybe the other extreme where they think they know it all. The students think they know it all. They're so darn smart. And they come to us with their ideals, and you may have to crush them, their hopes and dreams a little bit, and then build them up again. crush them in the best possible use of the word crush. Anxiety level. Are people nervous about the content? How do you make them feel at ease?
No.
So how do you build that in? And sometimes it is finding a resource that presents your material in a non-threatening way. Who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody the other day about learning languages. So I know 2.5 words in Punjabi. And if I was actually trying to be better, what I might do is go to YouTube and find, oh yeah, we were talking about cartoons. Thank you. See, I knew I would remember. If I go onto YouTube and maybe find some kids' cartoons that present language at a more elemental level and an engaging way, then perhaps I will learn 3.5 words by the time I have to go back to Saskatoon.
So that is pictorial.
Yeah, there's pictorial, there's other ways of doing it. My anxiety, I look at that and go, oh, that's for children. I should be able to figure it out. Whereas if you're giving material to your learners that are really high level and hard to read and to get through, then their anxiety is going to continue to be high. So how do you purposefully design something so that everybody is feeling okay? Well, they don't have to be an expert right away, but they just need to feel okay, because when you're anxious, you see what anxiousness does to the physiology, but it also shuts down people's minds and it makes it much harder for them to learn. So we want to design.
Make a start for the student. They should,
This thing we do in the lectures.
yeah.
Okay, this is there, these are the important things. This thing can come as a short question. This thing can
I mean-
come as a long question.
Yeah.
And these are the important features that you must remember for a particular disease as a, this thing we do when we are taking that lecture.
I think
And I told you the highlighted points.
Yes.
students should feel that they can, they are not, the teacher should make them feel, okay, you can do this course, and it is pretty inspiring and exciting. So just
Ask them. Ask them if they feel that way.
help them make a start.
Ask them. We have real life students. Ask them that.
Oh, yeah.
No, now.
No.
Ask them.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, okay.
Importance of parasitology, lecture was there. Told them 5 points why the subject is important.
Yeah.
It's lecture, it's given in the lecture.
Breaking down that information. We call that chunking. There's another cocktail party word for you. So you have this big, massive amount of knowledge, and right, it's like, how do you eat an elephant? Well, first of all, don't eat elephants, but if you do, one bite at a time. So you chunk it up into little pieces, and you can move through a bit. Oh, I get that. Formative assessment.
Yeah, I can do it.
Evaluation, and pretty soon you have gone through a whole big pile of it because you've made it morsel
Split it.
sized.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have built a lecture or you built a piece of content in a manner that is not so overwhelming. It's not.
Table of content for the journal topics. For disease, it is specific.
Mhm.
You cannot prepare a table of content. But for the introductory class, okay, this is introduction, parasitism, host, this we will discuss. And later on, we'll move. Their first slide is always of table of content, but that is restricted to the journal portion of the subject, not to the specific portion of the subject. This we can do for disease also. We can make table
Break it
of
up.
content.
Yeah.
For 4 or 5 points, the first slide. This can.
The main thing is to make the students fall in sort of love with your subject. With your subject.
Motivation.
Yeah.
Motivated to learn other stuff.
Yeah, that's, and how they can
Okay.
get attracted
Are we
towards.
still on here?
Yes,
Which one?
after computer skills.
Oh, okay, how motivated are
To
the
learn the student means, how can I know? Means it is a previous data.
Yeah.
How should I know? Means,
How do you know about their motivation?
yes.
Okay, so if you go to the next page,
Okay.
You can give them real life examples.
Yeah.
For example, there was a veterinarian, Dr. John Glenn. He made a drug, propofol.
John Glenn was an astronaut. What are you
No,
talking
no,
about?
no, he's a British
Oh,
pharmacologist.
okay, yeah,
He's a veterinary pharmacologist, and he made the drug propofol, and that drug is being used in med schools even at present for induction of anesthesia. And that drug, and I call it Michael Jackson drug,
uh-oh,
it killed him because he overdosed.
oh, okay.
So Dr. John Glenn, he got Lasker Award. So that's what you have to tell them stories. Okay, it's exciting. And he got Lasker Award 2019 That is second highest award after Nobel Prize. So you keep them telling them some inspirational stories.
Yes, engagement. So motivation. There's part of your answer right there. The reason why I asked you to turn the page is questions that you still have about your learners. So you can ask them, are you motivated to do this? What are your curiosities about this? What are you most afraid of? You can start by developing dialogue and rapport, because oftentimes, and you've seen it here, and bless you all for being here, but I will say, do you have any questions? And students will be like, nope, we're good, keep going, all right? They don't want to interrupt. They don't want to draw attention to themselves. They don't want to feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know the answer, so it's better to be quiet. But once you start to build a trusting relationship and rapport with your students, then they'll say, wait a minute, right? I think of this group on the first day, kind of quiet, right? You're just getting a sense of what was going on. Second day, oh my gosh, we were doing all kinds of interaction. You felt safe in this environment. You felt okay to challenge each other and to talk about what's going on. If you develop that kind of environment through your planning in your course, then you can start to have that information. They'll say, I don't really like this, right? Or I don't think this is of value to me. Oh, well, that's what Michael Jackson thought. And guess what happened to Michael? And then you can tell a story like that, or you can talk about how something that has some kind of connection to what you're doing is tying in and then makes it more interesting. More often than not, you okay? Good. Good. I don't want anybody to breathe in any tea this afternoon. More often than not, the students will remember a bit of your content, right? But they will remember the experience that they have with you forever. And so that's very important to try to manage or create that kind of environment. And when they're done, then they come back to you. And I know that some of you have shared how you're still in touch with your supervisors and people that you have worked with because they mentored you and you built that relationship. So maybe you didn't need to know that information at the time, but you created a conduit or a way that you could follow up later, or they could follow up later with you. And so it gets back to that. How do you know if they're motivated? How do you know anything about your students until you start to connect with them and build trust? And I do have some more specific ways to add to what I just said, but I think that's a great question.
Once you have semester system,
Yes.
there are 5 courses suppose. Any place for 3 courses. Out of that course, you cannot motivate all the students. I mean, this is my experience.
Yep.
Equally.
No.
Like one subject like microbiology, if I talk.
Mhm.
You get an obvious answer. I don't have to ask.
Yes.
Your silence says 1,000 words.
The body language told the story right there. Yes.
So I don't have to tell this like comparison to pathology.
Yes.
So how can that is why I'm asking whether how can I increase? Suppose.
Okay. Stay with me. You're going to get to that,
Yes.
but I think it's an important question, and it's one that we all struggle with, and every class is different, and something that works successfully with one group may not work as successfully for the next. So that's why we're constantly reflecting on the way we design our courses and trying to be better and trying to change things, or trying to change things while we're teaching it, because we may have had a plan and then we find out that we've got a group of learners who are particularly adept or skilled in one area, and it throws the rest of our plan off. And that's, again, Sunday nights, I sit in my office and think about how I can make things better. Even though I have taught that content so many times and planned it, I just need to fine tune. I just need to twist it a little bit to one direction or the other to make that fit with the particular group of students that I have in that one particular year. Okay, learner analysis. I'm just trying to think of where we're at here. I'm getting excited and then I'm losing my place. The opportunity to just summarize. So when you've gone through, there may be some themes that come forward that you can summarize. So at the bottom of that second page, and that helps you. If you keep this document, then you can go back to it in future years and say, oh, well, this is how things have changed. You can do some longitudinal comparisons. You can see how you have changed your own attitudes after a while. The next page 3 is the context analysis. What are my level of learning? So remind yourself, these are now experienced upper year students. So I can design my course with a little more autonomy, for example, or they know where to go online to get a particular data set. So I can be a little less structured in where I'm sending them, or I can ask them to start to work at the top of Bloom's taxonomy and add those higher order thinking skills, that analysis, synthesis, and other things like that. Prerequisites doesn't really matter. Or required courses don't really matter. So I'm skipping over some of these that aren't applicable to your particular program here. Class size. To remind yourself, maybe it's a course that you're teaching for the first time and you're used to teaching 15 students in an intimate classroom setting. All of a sudden you've given the large first year class and you have 105 or 95, right? How does that change the way you design your course? You don't have that same opportunity for quick group work and getting back together again. You may be more lecture-based and not have that same opportunity to be flexible. So those are things that you're keeping in mind. Again, you're doing this before your class starts, ideally, so you have time to make those changes. If it's a class that starts in one semester and then you teach another section in the other semester, you may not have as much time, but at least you can review this and reflect on what you've just done and see if there's anything that requires immediate change. I'm going to go on to the last page now. Common assignment. Do you have such a thing? So if you have multiple sections of a class, does everybody write the same final?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So and that final is written by someone else, or do you write your own final exams?
Maybe right.
Is it provided? Okay. So
There is an internal as well as external system. of
Okay, yeah.
examination.
So for the internal ones, then you do your own. Okay. So that's where maybe you want to get together with the other people who are teaching the other sections to make sure there's consistency.
Yes.
Again, if it's a new course, you may not know those other people as well as you thought, or their instructional style might be different than yours. But if your evaluation has to be exact, which it should be between sections, then it's really good to have that meeting. And that might be the consequence of that is common exams and assignments. Your planning must be before the class starts to meet with the other instructors. Because there's nothing worse as a department head or a dean or associate dean than there's 15 students in the hallway, they want to talk to you because their exam was harder than the other section's exam, right? Oh, yay. I've been on the other side of that and it's not ideal. So there's something to keep in mind in terms of the context. How do you keep everybody happy? Or someone gets a reputation as an easy marker. Is there anybody here has that reputation? They give high marks?
Yeah, you
To ask the
Yeah.
students, they are the best. judge.
Yeah. Who's the easiest marker? Who gives the highest grades? Yeah. There we go. Do you approve your own grades as the associate dean? Or does somebody have to?
Maybe it's the perception of the students, but let me explain how.
Okay, yep.
Philosophical.
We have lots of time.
How we evaluate the paper.
Yes.
They probably do not know.
That is,
Let
what
me,
is right.
yeah, let me explain.
Okay.
Like, suppose whole paper is there.
Yeah.
All 40% is objective. So if it is A is correct, A is correct.
Yes. Yep.
It's only the subjective, and then subjective also most of the teacher contribute into that. The portion which I have taught, I will check. The portion Pinder sir has taught to the student, he will be checking that.
But then why this?
Marks they see is a comprehensive marks where they are not knowing which part I have checked.
Because
or-
the final answer, mark sheet is Pathak sir.
They know the answer. They know the answer.
Okay.
Why they didn't say Upinder? Why
Oh,
they said Pathak? Why they said Pathak? Why not Upinder?
Yeah, I don't claim that I am a very hard task master in that. I'm having
Yeah, I may be lenient,
You're
I
popular, man.
can say that sir is the lenient grader here
Oh, okay.
because I have studied.
Yeah.
He was my teacher
Oh, good.
and I know his style of
Yeah.
game.
okay, thank you.
Your marks just went up even higher. Yeah, good job. That's funny. All kinds of other things that you may need to plan for. So do you have the resources? When it says on here, what is the available classroom technology? Technology is not just computers and laptops or tablets or whatever. Computers are those other tools, the diagnostic tools you need. And if you haven't planned in advance, then what's going to happen when you go to do that instruction? You don't have the materials there, or they're not working, or the batteries, the batteries are never working. Like you see every time I try to use this, right? So those are things that you need to keep in mind. I was working with an intern teacher one time, and they were teaching biology, and they came in and they were all ready to do their frog dissection unit. And so I was sitting in the back with my observer notepad and everything like that. And they went in and they're like, "Oh, where are the frogs?" Like, you're the teacher. Didn't you get your own frogs? No. So they hadn't gone to the area where the pith frogs were or anything like that. They just assumed that everything would be waiting for them. And all they had to do was to come in and then just start to go through their instruction. And if they would have thought about all the materials that they needed to be able to do this, they didn't have the scalpels ready, the pins, they didn't have the stages, the pads, anything like that. They just figured they were going to come in, there'd be a bunch of material set up for them. And that's a real eye opener for new teachers who haven't been through that, who've only been on the other side. So you obviously transitioned him well to from student to teacher because he is here today. But some people, it doesn't make that connection. And so it's really important for us to review what we need and well in advance. So you have to order the samples. You were talking about all the pathology samples you need, right? We were talking about that this morning, that you need skin cells and all that. Scrapping and all that.
That's not pathology, that's
Parasitology.
Sorry.
You can say
parasitology.
medical sample.
Yes.
Laboratory sample.
Fecal samples, that's what I was.
So he is a very sincere researcher, actually.
Yes.
The point
But you
here
have
is,
to have those, right? Or your students don't learn. Like you have to make sure that that material is available, correct?
Yeah, we have for them the positive samples with us in the laboratory. So
attention to detail.
Yes, see that. And if you have a document like this, then you're thinking about all of those items in advance. As opposed to people running down to the photocopier to make 100 copies
No,
of
that
that
never-
handout, right? So that everybody has.
That never happens here. People
no?
do plan
mm,
in advance, yeah.
Good.
Because the authorities are pretty strict. Yeah.
I'm glad.
What?
I don't think he agrees with you, but
No, I think he agrees.
concerned, sir.
who are these
Not
authorities?
concerned.
Yes.
Okay.
Concerned.
ਚੁੱਪ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਚੰਗਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ
Concerned.
That's what happens in our.
Hey, wait, you now have a copy of this document. You'll get an electronic one if you want to change it, by all means you do. And there may be things on here that are a part of your planning process that you would like to add in terms of thinking about your learner, thinking about your context. So that you're not just thinking about content. And so much of what people do in their teaching is about content. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yes, and last one.
These are already, no, it's not that
Last
exciting.
slide of this slide.
I'm just happy that the remote worked. That's what I'm excited about.
I thought.
You may have, go ahead.
Go back, what is the process of approval of the syllabus?
Yes.
What is
See,
the process of approval?
you don't have that problem, right? Do you do your syllabus and then give it to your department head and then they look at it?
No,
Like, how is it approved? Or somebody gives you your.
that is
syllabus?
when you make a new course,
Yes.
there are, who is going to approve it?
Yes.
So you never make a new course, so no problem for you. That's not your headache.
Or somebody else like BSNA or VCI
It is-
you have to teach.
Don't worry, doesn't concern you.
That part to design a course.
You are never going to design a course.
Suppose we have to design a course.
Yes. So
Who will be the?
in my world, it is the department head.
So in our country, you must be knowing it. He doesn't know anything. Who is going to approve your course?
So when you come to Canada, I will approve your course.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will be waiting in my office for you. And when you do course approval, often the professors, those who profess, who have taught their courses many times, you know that their syllabi are going to be good. When you're hiring an adjunct or a sessional or someone who is not
Assistantship.
experienced or someone who's new at the assistant level, oftentimes when they send you your syllabus, you send them an email and say, come to my office. And what we do is we go through it and say, where's your learner outcomes? Where's your assessment plan? How are you weighting these assignments? When are your due dates? Do you have a calendar? So a lot of what you see in this document, I use as a guide when I'm working with new instructors for the first time and the second time, and sometimes the third time.
That's not an issue
Yes.
here.
No.
Hmm.
But when you come to Canada, we will.
Have that issue.
Yes, then we have all kinds of issues. This is stuff that we've talked about in terms of planning. If you are not familiar, then you come see Dr. Karen and she gives you your learning outcomes, the brand new ones for your course, and then you take those and put them into your syllabus. They are approved. It is something that if you don't have an outside agency, becomes more of an issue. If you have more flexibility to design and have your syllabi approved, then these are things that you would create. Oftentimes in your case, you're just identifying them. So making sure that the correct ones are there. When the curriculum mapping process is done, there may be some shifts in what you have taught in the past. You may be taking some out and maybe adding some, but again, you're thinking about it as you're going through the planning process. Assessment. Talked a bit about that yesterday and how it connects, how it reflects on what you're doing for your learning outcomes. Oh, it's too good to be true. Oh, there we go. Now we finally get to selecting the content. So if we are not using UBD, this is where a lot of people start. Oh, I have a textbook. Oh, I have a reading package from the publisher. Oh, I have somebody's PPTs from last year. They get so excited about the content that they just take it all in.
Yeah. And lose the track.
Lose track. You end up with so much information. Oh, that would be good. Oh, that would be good. It's all about the ball, right? You want to be a tennis ball, not the basketball, not the hula hoop or what's the world's biggest ball? Exercise, yoga ball. Okay, that's the big one. We don't do yoga balls. We just do tennis balls. Okay. So here, now we have our learning outcomes. We have assessment. We've thought about our learners. We thought about values in our institution, what's important. And now we're finally thinking about the activities that we're going to do. And again, that is a process that will help you, even if you're just looking and reviewing something that you've taught before, and it may just be a confidence check and go, yep, good. I'm okay. I like what I'm doing in terms of my content, my methods. I have used this particular research or journal article and students love it. It makes sense. It's not intimidating. It doesn't create anxiety. They've given me feedback on it. This is the textbook that is recommended. I can go into my instructional segment now with confidence. So if we're not rebuilding or redesigning, it's just that check, that confidence check that we can go through. All right. And then once we're confident,
3 years.
then we start getting back to Dr. Saini's point that we have a plan, but we never know if that plan is going to work. So we're revising. That's Sunday night for me. It's the first one. Throwing things away. This is never going to work right. Making adjustments on the fly. I have to leave by 4 o'clock. Oh, okay. Well, that means I'm not going to do this. I'm going to change this. I'm going to shorten. Those kinds of events happen even when we have a really good plan that addresses our learners' needs and our outcomes, and we have good assessment. You all know that we are constantly changing things as we
Nothing
go.
goes
It's very
according.
dynamic. Yeah.
Hardly anything goes.
And when I say it takes 3 years to get right, I'm talking about when I teach a course for the first time,
Correct.
or when I design a course, so that I go in the first year and I'm like a newborn. I'm fresh and excited and everything is going to be fine. And I don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And some things are great. some things are disasters, in some areas I don't know anything about what I'm talking about, and some things I know way too much about what I'm talking about. So at the end of that first year, I take a breath. I look at my binder because for each class I have a lesson plan and I make notes. This didn't work. That was good, whatever. At the end of the year, I go back to that binder, I open it up, and then I start planning the next year. Okay, this worked. Good. I'm going to keep this the same. This was a disaster. Get rid of that. Change it. This was okay. Students hated this. They told me they hated it. I'm going to try something different. This textbook I can't get anymore. It's not being published. So I'm going to change it for another resource. All of that happens in between year 1 and year 2 for me. And then I teach year 2. And then all the things that worked in year 1 don't work the next time around, or they're different. But some of the things I've changed start to work better in year 2. And so I tweak it and make some more changes. And then I do year 3. And suddenly I'm starting to get some really nice alignment, some comfort. I have the amount of content at a reasonable level. So my students aren't jumping out of the window to get out of my classroom, right? Everything is okay. Then I feel confident that I have a class that is at least serviceable and provides what I need to provide. I am still going through the revising, throwing away, making adjustments on the fly, but it's not as bad. And the feedback I'm getting from my students is more that fine tuning that, oh, I think it would make more sense to move this ahead by a week in the class and then switch it with the other thing. So those minor tweaks all of a sudden give me a course after 3 years. And some people think, no, I'm going to teach it once. I'm going to get it right. It's going to be great. I'm going to teach it the same way every time. But those are the people who are naive and are just learning or don't have a true indication of how the teaching and learning process goes.
You know what? You are very lucky.
Thank you. Because I'm here with this group. I know that's
because you are part of a system which is so flexible, which allows you so much. Here it is just like a sort of machine. You are a small part of that machine, keeps on working the same way all the time. So you are in a flexible system.
Yeah.
And that's why I say you're very
I am
lucky.
very lucky.
Yeah.
And I'm still lucky to be here.
Huh?
Yes.
Take him to Canada, not me.
What's that? Take you to Canada? Okay, yeah. I may need to go buy another suitcase.
I stayed there for 4 years. I don't,
Okay. So things that people struggle with when they're planning.
there's no heaven on earth. There's some things are better here, some things are better there.
Yes.
50 here, 50.
Food is better here.
No. Even the life is very good.
It's better here. Traditionally people struggle with. So research tells us. So now you have to listen because I said research tells us. So this is true. The amount of content. Content is king or queen. It's very important to instructors to cover all the content. Oh my gosh, if I don't cover it all, something bad is going to happen. I have to. That's where we get into trouble. That's where we get away from that core piece of it. And we think, oh, well, it'd be really good if they just knew this little bit, might help them a little bit. And as you incrementally add to the content, you end up with a massive amount of information that is not all that need to know. So please, please, please be kind to your students. They're wonderful people. Just the need to know. The other stuff, if they ask you a question, then it becomes their assignment. So if they ask me something, I say, go find out and then let me know. And then we'll both have the answer. So I don't have to add that to my class. Now, that doesn't mean if there's some revolutionary breakthrough or change that needs to be added, by all means, do that. But just because we love our content doesn't mean everybody loves our content the same way. And I think of people who are maybe in the humanities, who love Shakespeare. They live and breathe Shakespeare. It's the most important part of their lives. And they are like, oh, just one more novel. Let's go through one more play. Let's break down one more character because it's the best. Like, how many times do you have to do that? I'm taking this class because I just need an English credit. I'm never going to love Shakespeare the way you love Shakespeare. And that's the way we have to think about our courses. If they love it, then they're going to come back and be your grad student. And then you can spend all day talking about Macbeth or Twelfth Night or whatever, Richard III, and that's great. But as an undergrad or as someone who is going through that, you want to just make sure you keep your content as compact and as relevant as you possibly can. And research says when you love a subject area, you are just piling on because you love to pile on. You know, you make trips to Stratford because you love Shakespeare and you cut your hair like Shakespeare and you wear cloaks and, you know, it's become part of your identity and your life, but it doesn't have to be so for your students. This is another thing. How many assessments do we do? Well, we talk about lots of formative assessments, but how many evaluations? You don't need to test everything you teach. Or you don't have to test it multiple times. You may have a comprehensive exam at the end, but some people feel that they have to have a number for every time the student is introduced to some content. So they're stressed because they're not thinking about learning. They're just thinking about that next exam you're going to give or that next assignment. So give them a chance to get assessed as much as possible, but not evaluated. Cadence of content. So how often do we go through things? Do we start with difficult? You know, what is the rhythm of your course? And as you teach a course, you'll realize how that rhythm changes.
10 minutes.
Yeah. All good. No, I said I would be early, but I said I'm never on. I always lie, right? So you work till 5, right? You get paid till 5?
No, I have to
Okay,
go
anyway,
for my student.
I know, I'm just kidding. Working around holidays and peak times, we forget about that. Now, I don't know what kind of holidays impact what you do, but we have a lot of holidays in Canada that change. So it's not always on the same day. Sometimes it's the second Monday of the third month. And we plan and we have everything ready and we have this great schedule. And this day we're going to learn this day. And then on the first day of class, you get in there and someone puts their hand up and says, "Oh, we're not here that day." And you're like, "Oh, can't believe it." So be aware if, again, I don't know if it impacts the scheduling that you do, but the calendaring, our students on a break that week and you planned a whole bunch of activities and they're not even going to be here.
Here, there are some undeclared holidays. All of a sudden, the chief minister will say, okay, tomorrow is a holiday, or somebody dies.
Yeah.
And then 2 days off.
Do I believe him? Is that true? They're laughing, so I don't know if I.
No. They are laughing because I'm telling you,
Okay,
really.
the honest truth? Okay. Do I believe him, students?
Yes, sir.
There, okay. The year marks just went up in his class.
So,
Important.
undeclared holidays do happen.
Yes, they do.
Or you have to go out for an outbreak, and then
Yes.
that also adjustment you have to make.
Okay, the syllabus. Now, we talked about this a bit earlier. You can't really change your syllabus here, correct?
No.
So what we're going to talk about instead is maybe another document that you could prepare that goes along with it that helps your students. Okay, but syllabi, which is the plural of syllabus, there's our English lesson for today. Essentially what you're trying to get people to do. So if you haven't thought about the role of the syllabus, the framework, the goals, the culture, often your syllabus has a piece in it that comes from your central administration that says what happens if your students are engaged in academic dishonesty, those types of things, student report. So it's really meant to be all of that important contractual information that your students need to know about the course, maybe the department, the university, what have you. A syllabus is a contract. Did you know that, students? Have you ever heard a syllabus referred to as a contract? No? It's a contract. Even though you don't sign it, by receiving it, by signing up for that class, it is an agreement that you have with your instructor to do things, and it's your instructor's job to provide things. If either one of the people in that contract break it, then there's a problem. So it's really, really important. It's not just a piece of paper that everybody gets for every class. It is an actual contract. And so if you don't hand in your assignments, you have broken that contract. If you don't attend lectures based on an attendance policy, if you go to ChatGPT and write all of your essays by downloading them, you have broken the contract. If the instructors are not providing you with the information that you need to be successful, and they're not assessing you or evaluating you in the proper manner, they are breaking the contract. So it's really important to have a sense of what it does and the importance of what a syllabus does or the role that it fulfills. A lot of people just see it as some writing, some information, but it is essentially a contract and you need those two parties to be a part of it.
Contractors, yeah.
This is something that students struggle with. Okay, students, this is bad. This is on you. Students do not always read your syllabus. How many of the people, instructors here, spend time on the first day going through all the elements of the syllabus? Do you do that?
Most of them,
You walk through each and every part? Good.
most of them. Or rather, they would do it every week, I think. So how much they have covered, how much is left, right?
I think that's in practical possible. That's fabulous. Okay. Some people don't.
No.
Some people go into class, they hand it out, and then they start their first lesson, and they assume the students are going to read it.
We provide,
Bad students.
we provide syllabus in the form of lecture schedule to the students.
Yes. Good. Very important to continue that practice. Yeah.
Every department.
Good. My experience is different. And that not every student does that. I take my first class and I don't teach any content. I do pre-assessment, I go through the syllabus, I play all kinds of strange games to get to know the students, to engage them, to figure out what their motivations are. And then on the second day, that's when teaching starts. I am preparing the soil by going through the syllabus. And so if I say, do you understand? They all go, yes. And then they actually do understand. Not just, yes, would you please be quiet so we can go because it's almost 4 o'clock. All right. This is another one. If you're not sure about the information that your students need, so in this case, we're talking about we don't have the ability to create a new syllabus, but you can have a just in case information sheet to go along with it so that they don't come to you later and say, well, I didn't realize I had to do that. Because if you're not allowed to change your syllabus, but there's some important elements that you want them to be aware of, then you put it down, you hand them both out at the same time on the same day, and then they know what the expectations are. There's nothing worse than students who come to class and say, well, you never told me. It's because you didn't read it. It was there. So that's why I was glad to hear that you spend the time to take people through that syllabus, because it is really crucial that they know everything they need to. You have to have this done. You have to purchase, bring your lab coat to every lab. Oh, I forgot my lab coat. Well, then you're not in the lab today because you need your lab coat. Right? You need a stethoscope. Who was talking about stethoscopes at lunchtime, right?
Yeah, he was saying that they provide free stethoscopes.
Oh, well, I don't even need one. There'll be one there for me. That's not
We
good.
provide,
And yet the students don't bring.
Yeah.
That's what.
Yeah.
these are all interns. They also got stethoscopes. They
Free.
joined, yes, they joined on, they are inducted in internship on 1st of March. They are having their internship right now in TVCC. How many of you are having stethoscope in your bags? Everyone?
Let's see.
Let's see. कितने को stethoscope है दसो?
Let's see.
That's practical.
Let's see.
Yes. Only 2. Last 4.
कार में होगा सर.
You can get case anytime. Even while going outside, you can have a straight dog there. Maybe you need a stethoscope at that time. You should be prepared.
कार में है सर.
Yes.
Litman da.
Little man. Little man, देखो PhD कर लेंगे यार.
In your document, so we're talking about that companion document, not necessarily your syllabus because you can't change it. Obviously. But make sure you have all the information. You can be brief. Students aren't going to read a 87-page document, but they need the information they need. You may want to inject your personality into that document. So you may want to share a bit about your background. I always talk about who I am, what I like, what I do. I always have pictures of myself, much like I did in the various PowerPoints that I've showed, so that people know that I'm a person. I'm not just a deliverer. I'm not a teaching machine, but I'm a person. And I think that goes a long way to building trust and having students share as well. So I often start by you know, as I get to know people, I ask them about themselves, but I also like to share about who I am, and then they feel that they can be comfortable in my classroom. And you can certainly do that in your companion document. Be organized. Don't give someone a document that's hard to read and confusing. That's just common sense. You know, talked about different roles of committee members. Maybe committee members know content. I'm the organizer committee member. So if your tables are not right, if your page numbers are wrong, that's my job. And so when it comes to building something that I want to look professional, I spend a lot of time designing it so that it's working. And it's important for you to do that too, because you want the information to be accessible. I'm not going to do that. I want to go to, oh, wait a minute. I thought I had something else. Let me just check one thing about this. Oh, no, that's for Monday afternoon. Okay.
Perfect.
What's that? I know.
You are saying 4.
I know. I'm doing good
You
today.
have a mutiny between you.
Questions about the syllabus. I'm still a little disheartened about the lack of flexibility. But I think if you are communicating some of those important things to your students, either in that companion document or even through the discussions that you have, you can talk about the way that you've organized your information, the way that you have got your content ready, and start to manage your class in a positive way and get the information that they need to be successful. Okay. Uh-oh. What are you signing for?
He's in
Is that,
side,
is that FedEx? Yeah.
No.
follow-up administrator.
Yeah. You just get a check. Smaller bit of information, but also give you the opportunity to reflect on what we've done, take some things away for the next few days. When we come back on Monday, we're going to go into teaching strategies and student engagement. And I'm sure some of you thought, well, that's all we were going to be doing this whole academy, was talking about teaching strategies and student engagement. But I think it was really important to set the foundation with what we have done. I hope you feel comfortable in the environment we have here and that you are able to tie it into what's going on. I really appreciate your willingness to share your thoughts and engage in what we're doing here. I'm also very grateful to the students who sit in the background and listen to us and hopefully are learning and taking something away. And until I throw a question at you out of the blue and make you feel uncomfortable. But I want you to know that the reason why these wonderful people are here is because they want you to be as successful as possible. And you know, at any point in time, if you think that we are steering away from that path, you have full diplomatic immunity to call on me to say, Jay, no, this doesn't sound right. We need to do something a little bit different. Anyway, enjoy your weekend. I will see you on Monday. I'll probably have some good pictures of our adventures to add to my PowerPoints for Monday. But just thank you all. 4:01, 1 minute late.
Thank you for your sincere,
1 hour 59
Very
minutes.
Thank you. Okay. Have a nice week.
Yes.